So why would governments want to even consider pursuing the cloud?
Well, I think because the cloud is emerging as potentially the most dynamic, cost-effective choice. And in some situations where they're connecting publicly to Canadians, maybe the actual service could reside outside of the government and be a more effective way of connecting.
Is it more effective because it's residing outside the government? Is that the premise?
Mm-hmm. But privacy and security become a huge issue.
There's a lot of hype around the cloud. Is there a danger that the hype will take over from the smart business planning processes and case that needs to be done?
Not in the long term. In the short term, yes, the hype is everybody's motivated to try and say they have a cloud offering, they are a cloud, and people need to understand the difference.
What are the main risks for the private sector, for the public sector in cloud computing?
Well, the main risk is data sovereignty, privacy, information. Canada has very strict laws in that regard.
And when it comes to governance, what do governments need to do? They are large organizations, they are very complex, and they want to institute a very complex system with the cloud. What should they put in place to protect the interests of the data that you just mentioned, for example?
Well, in Canada, all of our governments, provincial or federal, are based on the British Westminster system. So the departments have a certain amount of autonomy, they have their own mandate. But there's been a move over the past few years for there to be common service providers. And to some degree there are, and to some degree they're moving towards. The biggest, most ambitious one is the federal government with the Shared Services Canada. The question becomes, can they align in governance the objectives so that they're in common? Now that Shared Services Canada has taken over 40-some departments' infrastructures, they're going to be, one of their objectives is to start to standardize processes, get better bang for the buck out of the people that are supporting it, and the technology get the highest utilization. Well, the cloud is a completely different delivery model and not using that equipment. So the question is, how does a department serve the business of the department, and shared services serve the greater good, and look at the cloud? What's the governance mechanism? Who makes the decision?
You wrote in the magazine what Shared Services Canada had to do in order to be a success. Can you see Shared Services Canada moving toward a cloud solution, I guess? Do you know if that's in the cards?
I don't see any, well, I don't know if it's in the cards for them. They have many things to do in the next few years that are fundamentals. And some of those have to do with common management practices, service management practices, and a whole bunch of things that will realize tremendous benefits. The issue of moving to the cloud is a question of timing and when it should be considered, not necessarily this afternoon.
And also scope, because one thing we learned is that the cloud isn't just a big box, right? There's lots of different ways, steps and scope in which you could approach it.
Yes, well, I think we come back to governance, the process, and full transparency on both sides. Helps you make everybody feel they're trusted partners, but it helps you find gaps. For example, if a CIO said in a department, I want to go out and offer services, no reason, I don't have to go to shared services because I don't need infrastructure. This is a packaged bundled service, it's priced, I'm confident the data is going to be secured private, security is good, I'm just going to go straight out there. The question is, should they be able to, or should they not be able to? So somehow or another, if everybody starts doing that and going straight to the cloud, gee, you don't need to call shared services, then are we undermining what we're trying to do with it in the first place?
Thank you.
Pleasure.